Oh, for that warning voice which he who saw the apocalypse heard cry in heaven aloud. Then when the dragon put to second rout, came furious down to be revenged on men. Woe to the inhabitants on earth, that now, while time was, our first parents had been warned the coming of their secret foe, and scaped happily, so scaped his mortal snare. For now Satan, now first inflamed with rage, came down, the tempter ere the accuser of mankind, to wreak on innocent frail man his loss of that first battle and his flight to hell. All right. That's that. That's some documentary evidence of this ongoing project, which if I live through coronavirus will take 10 to 11 months. Now we begin. So after each, I do three takes of Satan or earthly things. But when I'm recording God or Jesus, I allow them 4 takes, because I think God and Jesus requires more perfection. So 3 takes of every little patch of dialogue, unless you're God or Jesus. It's sometimes the angelical, like Gabriel or Uriel. And now I painstakingly go through each. I pick up the best, finesse it with whatever reverb I think, and then I move on to the next batch. And it's just it's just long. So we've started book 4 officially, and now I'll put the headphones on and begin a little selection. Thank you.
Thank you for the in-depth interview.
Thank you. And I know a lot of people have been asking about it at this time of coronavirus. We need doctors, nurses, and Miltonic interpreters as well. So
I have heard that.
on the front lines. All right.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
What's that? Yes, I have been to Earth. Yes, I went back to Earth in, last time I was there was 2020. And I'll tell you, the first time I went to Earth, I showed up, I had $2 in my pocket. That's all I had. And I'll tell you something about the people on Earth. They're just willing to, if you're willing to do work, they'll give you a job down on Earth. And I started off with $2 and I built a company out of that. And Earth, I gotta tell you, it's a great place to just go and land and get your feet on the ground from the bottom up kind of thing. I will say that about Earth and the Earth people that I've worked with. They are some of the kindest, most loving, and only people in the universe. And that says a lot or a little. I don't know.
Hello, I'm Joe Wicks, and I'm going to show you some great fitness stuff you can do. This is a little Pilates exercise called doing an audiobook recording of Milton's Paradise Lost. This is a bit of behind the scenes action here, and just as a way of saying or showing people that if I'm not constantly producing comedy, I'll have a run of comedy sketches, and then it's like I've got to do this too. So it is like 2 different worlds. And I'm on book 4 now, and I'm midway through Satan's opening soliloquy of book 4, which is, when you read at the time, some church leaders, of course, had problems with Milton Satan because he was a little bit too well-rounded compared to Christ and God. And it is fascinating, and it was a huge influence on Blake's Marriage of Heaven and Hell the following century. Where Blake actually writes in it, and I've not got the quote in front of me, but let's see if I can remember it. The reason Milton wrote in fetters and the reason Milton wrote at liberty when he wrote of devils and hell, and in fetters when he wrote of God and angels, is because he was a true poet and of the devil's party without knowing it. And so this opening monologue, Satan expresses a lot of his humanity, even though he's pure spirit. He regrets with lines like, speaking of God, he deserved no such return from me, whom he created when I was in that bright eminence. He's acknowledging the truth, and it's actually frightening in places to read this, to see this again. Because it gives him a self-reflection and an honesty, and you can see by the end of the soliloquy how he resolves his only solution is evil, be thou my good. And just, you don't come away a total loser, at least I can be king of hell. But in this soliloquy, At one point he says, my dread of shame among the spirits beneath whom I seduced with other, so other his fellow devils, you know, he's got to do this to show off for them as well. So he's got regret for what he did. He thought one step higher would set me highest, make him God, and he wouldn't have to be grateful anymore. But you and I were having a bit of a kind of a disagreement on the concept of gratitude, were we not?
Yes.
Because I love this is, and I'm trying to play this with tears. The voice that I've chosen for Satan, I was deliberating what, and I thought just go for your basic devil. Go for sober and some still paying, still a bit of a whisper and a gravel to the voice, a gravel effect to the voice, because I want it to be easy for the ear to understand. So let's say your average person who hasn't read Paradise Lost or hasn't been introduced to it, maybe they're cleaning the house, or whatever. Maybe they're doing something and they've got it on kind of in the background. That the switch will be such a juxtaposition that the ear will go, okay, Satan's talking now, and their ear will be tuned to hear through a satanic filter versus a Miltonic or a Christ or a God. I want to say I do have a bit of stage fright from time to time, and even with these videos, especially I think recently there's somebody named Dan Poynton who left 20 comments, maybe 25 comments on the video where it was called "Thou Shalt Not Criticize Comedy Unleashed," and because I don't know the mindset of somebody who likes fake profiles, it's hard for me to understand, but it was pointed out to me that this was probably a fake profile, and I was shown how to go there and see, okay, they don't have any content and it's a made-up picture, and it occurred to me that it might actually be Andrew Doyle, since that's what he does. So, because I noticed that there were all these conversations about why can't everything be up for debate, and that would be the kind of stuff that if he was a real brave person, he would actually discuss face to face. But the whole thing, so it was like you get so many of those comments, and you realize, I think that's why I get stage fright, because I know there's people out there that don't create anything themselves, but they love to go around and see what other people create and go, they sound algorithmic, don't they? They're just and it's just a noise that I find terrifying, because especially when you're revisiting Paradise Lost and Satan flies through chaos, you really can't wait to get to heaven or even just earth to get out of that hell, and that's where we are now in Book 4. Satan has landed on earth, and he is about to he's going to begin his initial plans of the downfall of mankind, and it's really hard. The challenge acting is because I have chosen that traditional devil voice, because I want to keep it simple. There's so much complexity here with the sound cues and with the words themselves, of course, is that I want the ear to be able to go Satan, Christ, God, but within those voices, I want to put a lot of subtlety as well, and you have to actually, so you don't avoid, so you can avoid what some other productions of this, the few productions that are out there, one by the BBC, fall into, which is, they sound very nice if you're not paying attention, but you realize they're not putting the subtlety and nuance into the characters. And I want Satan to cry here at points. I want him to choke back tears. He deserved no such return from me. It sounds better on the version I just recorded, but to keep that gravel and to just, he deserved no such return from me. And that's hard. It's hard because you have to kind of blend the cartoonish with the real life human pathos of this. This is somebody who regrets what they've done. And we were discussing earlier the line that I particularly love, forgetful and understood not. He didn't want to pay thanks anymore for the rest of eternity. That was what it was all about. His pride said to him, and this is why they say that of the 7 deadly sins, pride is the worst. His pride said to him, with one step higher, I could be the highest, and therefore I wouldn't have to give thanks anymore. It was too much of a ball ache to give thanks, even though he says, what burden then? I understood not that a grateful mind by owing owes not, but still pays, at once indebted and discharged. What burden then? This is the behind the scenes of the Paradise Lost, probably 10 to 11 month project. Putting it out there now too, in case anybody. I know there's some thieving little people at Comedy Unleashed who like to hoard clips that don't belong to them. And you never know how devious these fuckers are. Maybe they would, steal, but this came to me at the beginning of February, this idea of acting out Paradise Lost. So this is the beginning of book 4, and I want to start here because the sound effect I hear obviously is a comet or a blazing rocket, just because Satan is actually a spirit, and so you can, there's room to put in all sorts of wild comic book sound effects. That there's a couple times in book 2 and book 3 where I have him when he flies, he just shoots off like a rocket. So I start there because Milton begins book 4 with "oh," that in the 17th century expression of "oh," very biblical Old Testament prophecy. You start with Satan, he's imagining Satan coming down. "Oh, for that warning voice which he who saw." The second chunk of this dialogue I recorded right around here, and now I get to this part for the whispering aspect of, because we're about to enter Satan's soliloquy upon viewing Eden for the first time, and we can see why certain church leaders might have taken umbrage in his portrayal of Satan, because this is Satan's Hamlet, his Hamlet soliloquy right here that begins, "O thou that with surpassing glory crowned," because he begins to question all his motives and what brought him here and how much he does not want to be in this situation. He's not in hell going, "Fuck it, hey man, AC/DC, crank it up." No, it's much more complex than that. That's where the 1980s jean jacket kids that I grew up with, man, play the record backwards, Will. Fucking Satan, man. We didn't understand it either. And on the other end of the spectrum, atheist Marxists don't understand it either. It's just, oh yeah, Milton had lots of different words there. Anyway, so what is who's the snowflake today? Yes, okay, well, it's power to the people and the working classes and all that, the middle class shit stirrers. The people who take umbrage at the fact that you're a working class person and you put your hands on Milton. I know it sounds a bit paranoid right now, but there's a little bit of that. Andrew Doyle, when he was on the phone, because apparently I said from the stage that I felt like I had lobotomized myself when I had to leave this project and go back to comedians and go, it's all a bit triggered, isn't it? And, "Ooh, yeah, did you see my new tweet as a different person?" And he got really upset on the phone the night that he hung up on me and then took down all the clips that he's now saying I asked them to do that, which of course I didn't. Hung up the phone, and he hung up on me twice, and the second time he hung up, took down all the things. But at one point in the conversation, I said, "Look, I'm doing this Milton project." And he says, "Yes, I know. Well, I actually taught Milton." So apparently struck a nerve with him there. I don't know why, but this is, I guess people really get upset if you tell them they're doing something like a little less as an entertainer, and somebody who supposedly has something very important to say, that you're doing something of less quality if you're just pretending to be a different person on Twitter and just stoking the fires of whatever video game mentality there is of more likes, less likes, ding dong 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 that they're in. Because to me, I've always thought this is the way out, and it's like John Thaw, who played Regan in The Sweeney and Inspector Morse and all these great characters, was working class Manchester, and I love the story his brother tells. His brother says he came back from a boot sale one day and he had vinyl albums of Gielgud and Olivier reading Hamlet. And he told his brother, "Can you believe this stuff is just out there for anybody?" And that's really what it is. That there's a liberation to this, and and knowing that no matter what Brendan O'Neill may say about what the working classes need and want and are really interested in, when it comes to notions of good and evil, he certainly doesn't understand that either. And that's really what this is all about. It's how evil is hatched, and how much we can't identify with Satan. And I think that's one of the many aspects of this work that made it so revolutionary. We can identify with the satanic in each one of us and the satanic in others, and there's that. And then there's also this notion of to aspire something beyond what Blake called the mundane shell, but what Milton might call possibly the satanic. But this is a lovely, I'm not recording it right now, I'm recording the final bit of Milton's opening, the preamble for this book, which will slow it down to, "Now conscience wakes despair that slumbered, wakes the bitter memory of what he was, what is, and what must be worse. Of worse deeds, worse sufferings must ensue. Sometimes towards Eden, which now in his view lay pleasant, his grieved look he fixes sad. Sometimes towards heaven and the full blazing sun, which now sat high in his meridian tower. Then much revolving, thus in sighs began. Sighs, sad. None left but by submission, and that word disdainful bids me, and my dread of shame among the spirits beneath, whom I seduced with other promises and other vaunts than to submit, boasting I could subdue the omnipotent. Ay me. Oh, you filmed that? Good. Do you like that? So we're on now?
Yeah.
Well,
You've got things to say.
this is the full range of satanic emotions. You know, this is the most touching speech, I think. The first really touching. I mean, they're all wonderful speeches, obviously, because it's Milton, but the first where you see kind of a paradoxically human dimension to Satan is in this opening soliloquy from Book 4. You know, he starts off regretful, and then he comes back in. It's his Hamlet soliloquy. He's seeing the situation from all different angles, almost as if he doesn't want to be compelled. And this was the cartoonish version of the devil that I grew up with in Missouri, and it's why early on I rejected Christianity as a probably preteen, because first off it scared me, and secondly because I without knowing at the time it felt very cartoonish. It was like the devil is always evil, you know, and it was at first it was C.S. Lewis, and then later other writers, particularly Blake and Milton, that gave me a more well-rounded vision of Christianity and how poetically revolutionary it was. So we identify, you know, I think the attempt that we identify with elements of Satan, and the criticism, another criticism, it wasn't just that Satan was well-rounded, that the few critics there were of this poem at the time, it wasn't just that this religious concern that Satan was portrayed as too human or too somebody we can empathize with a bit too much. It was also, it felt at the time that the characters of Christ and God were a bit two-dimensional. And I've just gone through Book 3, and of all the voices so far, God took the most energy, because I did him as a very slow, old, wise man. And that's long, to do that voice for long periods of time is very difficult, but I tried to give them, I think the dimension is there, and I think with Christ and God are not really divided. I mean, they're two separate entities, but they're also part of the triform God. But they I believe, in this poem, represent kind of a pleasing serenity without all the drama. And that's what I found so far. Working on Books 1 and 2, starting in hell and then getting out of hell, it was really fucking crazy, but you had to keep up that kind of frenetic energy, I think, that kind of fits with hell, the crackling flames and the demonic voices and the mood shifts. And so when I got to heaven, I thought I could finally relax in Book 3, so just kick back, relax. And then I realized I was anxious doing that too, because I thought, heaven, everything's got to fucking sound perfect. You know, you can have a little crazy shit in hell, but everything's going to sound perfect and beautiful. So it was a completely different approach. But now in Book 4, you know, we come to earth, and we finally come to paradise. We have our first flirtations of Satan with paradise. And this soliloquy, as I say, it goes from regret, it goes to this comparison. I mean, how many times have we done that? How many times have we looked to somebody else and said, but they had the same free will that I did, and yet why did I do this and they did that? And he's going through that there. He wished that he wouldn't have been created with such dignity and grace as he was, because if he was born, he goes through all these possibilities. Maybe this wouldn't have happened if I had had a better past, for example. And then this little, you know, nay, cursed be thou. He goes through all these things, curse you, fuck you. And then all of a sudden, wait a second, fuck me. I use my free will, you know? And it's funny that the whole Protestant Catholic dichotomy that, you know, since the days of the Reformation, you know, I see the pluses and minuses on both sides. You know, there's something about having a really tight liturgy and somebody kind of guiding it along. You know, say what you want about the Pope or whatever, and the obsession with rituals. The Protestant view was, you don't need any of this shit. You can go right to the source. And I grew up in Protestant communities, and a lot of people out there where I was from just kind of made it up as they went along. You know, I was reading in the paper today, it says, right, and then I hear that today in things like the climate change people. I hear that, and then I hear something not religious at all with the Andrew Doyle's and the Andy Shaws. It's just this neutral robot going, "Don't say this, wink, wink. The money comes from here." That's more communistic. But in a religious sense, the religious people the communities I grew up were largely Protestant in nature. All the splintering denominations, and I saw the plus in that, which is the do-it-yourself attitude. Which Blake would have been in favor of as well, that kind of your direct connection to the word itself, and you don't need an interpreter, which is what I'm doing now actually for Milton, so I'm a bit of a hypocrite. But there's so many good points he makes in this, and this is the 12-book version and not the 10-book version. And a lot of what he added to the 12-book version was a lot of subtle digs against the papacy in there as well. So it is interesting to find myself kind of, because I rejected kind of the Protestant kind. They used to scare me. The world is going to end, and when the rapture, and the kind of like, oh, you're just riffing now, but you're still freaking out a little child, you know. And so I kind of rejected that. But you look at this now, there is something really rebellious in the fact that obviously he served prison time, and this is what those fakers at Comedy Unleashed just couldn't grasp. It's not about, oh, I turned that down, that safe space thing that wasn't paying anyway, so I didn't lose anything. And now here I am fluttering about the media. Oh, you want to hear my opinions? Tickety-tock, tickety-boo, woo, 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 look at me speak. It's not about that. It's, the people that I look to are the people that served prison time for their convictions, and he was one, and gave us, as has been, Shakespeare might have been the greatest poet this country produced, but this has often been called the greatest single work of poetry because he was attempting to recapture that Homeric thing that had not been done in England up to this point.